Good evening. Welcome to our daily class on Rebbe Nachman on Patreon. Well, we're wrapping up the second Torah of the first section, Torah Bet, with a recap of most of the major concepts that we touched upon over the last week that we've been working on this Torah. And we'll see that it really unifies something very important that spiritually sensitive people will know intuitively, and that we should all be aware of. That there's a connection between the different organs in our body. And when certain organs are used properly, the other ones work better. And when the opposite is true, the opposite is true. And so the Rebbe is teaching us about this integrated relationship between the different parts of our body, and that we have an agreement, a metaphysical agreement, to treat ourselves well in order that our bodies will perform better in all different ways. So with that in mind, remember this idea of the scent of the covenant. Right? A covenant is an agreement. You know, when people get along, you can tell. And when they don't, it's also pretty easy to tell. So he begins the last paragraph of the Torah, Amor el Kohanim, say to the Kohanim. Now he says this is an aspect of prayer. As it is written, Et Hashem Marta Hayom. And that God which you said today, the Kohanim, they are the aspect of Torah. So tell the Kohanim is the idea of prayer to Torah. How? B'chinat nishamot. And this idea of the Kohanim, which is Torah, is also an aspect of the souls. As we learned about the souls that travel in prayers and go to the Tzaddik Ador. And that was represented in the famous pictographic mashal of Rabbi Bar Hanai. We learned that yesterday. As it is written in the prophet Malachi, Ki sifte Kohen yishmenu dat v'torah, that the lips of the Kohen will keep Torah and knowledge. Aharon is bechinat mishpat, and Aaron, the head, the first Kohen, Nasaron and Mishpat ben Israel, he would carry around the judgment of the Jews. That's the idea of the breastplate. You know, the 12 tribes, the 12 precious stones that were put on a golden armature that would hang by chain around the neck of the Kohen. Well, this is not just a pretty ornament, but rather it represents the power of Mishpat, of judgment and justice over the 12 tribes. And yesterday we also learned this idea again of the prayers being brought to the Tzaddik Ador, and we learned that that's like this migration of energy going from bottom to top, from all the groundswell of the spiritual power of the everyday people gathers and builds and filters and rises all the way to the top of the pyramid and reaches to the Tzaddik Ador. And we've learned earlier, by the way, that the tzaddik, he has this ability to discern the ratzon of each person, a person's true will. And remember, ratzon is the letters tzinor, the conduit, the pipeline is ratzon. And so they lead to the tzaddik ador. And then he knows where to send that energy. He knows when to send that power and those prayers and those souls above. And that's the prayers that go to Moshe Mashiach. Moshe is the symbol of the Tzaddik Ador. And of course, Mashiach is the ultimate hope for that concept worldwide. Now, Vahu Yakim et Mishkan. And then this person, Moshe Mashiach, will build the Mishkan. As we've also said before, the Jewish people would bring all their valuables to the Levi'im would sort them and bring them to Moses to put together the Mishkan. All the skins of animals that they were sewn together to create the walls of the Mishkan, the silver that was melted and smelted and turned into the sockets that held the various boards of the walls of the Mishkan, and then, of course, the Aron HaKodesh, which was a acacia wood box with gold covering, and everything that they made was made handmade, of course. There was nothing else back then. But it was all brought to Moses, see? And so this idea of bringing the shefa, bringing the power, your spiritual power, when we bring them all to the tzaddik ador, there's this concentration of the power. And that gives Moses the ability to do these miracles. He wasn't an alone operator. Moses wasn't one of these guys that just runs the whole show. He did run the show, but not because he chose to, but because rather people brought him their power. And we see that in the building of the Mishkan. And of course, the Rebbe says this Mishkan is a spiritual building as well. And so people bring the tzaddik their prayers. It doesn't mean they pray to him, not at all. We pray to God. But sometimes we get kind of blocked in our level, and our prayers are not able to rise up to where they need to go. So the tzaddik takes all the prayers and takes them where they need to go. And this is the idea of Eviu et Mishkan el Moshe, v'zeh perush Rashi lahazhir hagedolim al haketanim. And Rashi tells us, what is this about? This is that the great ones, the learned, the powerful, the wealthy, the influential, they would take care of and, warn and guide and guard the small ones, the little people. That the great people, their real responsibility is not to take advantage of the little people. The great people, their responsibility is to warn and guard and guide the people who don't have that kind of power. And that obviously operates in all spheres of life. And in Befoal, in action, it looks like this, that God's telling Moses and Aaron and all the prophets, you are the great ones. Because, guys, I speak to you, and I teach you Torah, and I give you wisdom. But I don't give it to you for your sake. I give it to you so that you can talk to the other people who can't talk to me, who are not able to achieve that level, to tell them and to teach them, and to guide them and guard them. And that's lahazhir hagedolim al haketanim, to warn the great ones about the little ones. Vayinu tzaddik ador, and this, of course, leads to this pyramid we talked about, this righteous man of the generation, shu b'chinet Moshe me'or gadol. And that's the idea. He's the aspect of Moses, the great light, which is like the sun. Yazhir v'ya'ir et tefillah. He's bringing it to the smaller ones, which is the prayer. What does this mean? That the soul of a human being, especially a tzaddik at this level, he has the power to illuminate prayer, to take our words and make them greater, more vibrant, more powerful. Shehi b'chinet me'or katan. And that's the idea of the small light. And of course we see that basic paradigm that the sun is the great light and the moon is the little, it's not a light at all, it's a rock that keeps reflecting the sun. So the great one sends his power to the little one and gives kiviyachol, the little one, light. And that's what the tzaddik is supposed to do for the people in the generation. Like the sun gives to the moon. So one is called the Me'or Gadol, the great light, and one is called the Me'or Katan, the little light. And then the next part of the pasuk, L'nefesh lo titama be'amav, the Torah tells us a very interesting thing. It says that a Kohen is not allowed to make himself tameh by dealing with a dead relative, whereas most Jews do have to take responsibility for the burial of their deceased and departed. The Kohen is not allowed to become a tameh. He's not allowed to do that. And he tells us, well, this idea of not becoming tameh is the idea of guarding the spiritual sexual covenant. Okay? And this idea of purity at this level is brought in the Zohar, the ikara de yitzra bisha, the essential power and focus of the evil inclination. Al-Aryan is focused on illicit relations. Ikara de misavuta. And that's the essential impurity. That there's all kinds of impurity in the world. Let's face it. But it's the focus, the central one of all, is this particular desire for illicit relations. Because you shmor the brit, but when a person guards that covenant, he merits to the aspect of prayer. So what are we talking about here? That when a person guards, remember, and this is all in the center column of the tree of life. We have keter, dot, then we have the two nostrils and the mouth. This is all in the center column. To Tiferet, the heart, and then to Yesod and Malchut, the covenant and the sign, the seal of the covenant. They're all in a straight line, which means they have direct impact on each other. And that's what we began our little talk with, about this influence of parts of ourselves on other parts of ourselves. So what he says here is a beautiful, amazing thing. That when we merit to guard our spiritual, sexual covenant, and that power rises up the center column, and it strengthens both our speech, which is prayer, and then he goes on to tell us, that God will seal his praise in us. What does that mean again? It means that God has a collection of praises, right? And he wants them to be sung into the world. So he seals them in somebody like King David. That means he gets the download of God's inspiration of song. And then he's able to play it back to the world. So he's sealing the song in the person who has this covenant. And then he goes on further from the mouth up to the nose, where we smell things, the scent that is enhanced by this covenant is expressed in the Tahara, as the sages taught, Misha batla Tahara batla reach. That once the Jewish people lost the paraduma, which is the red heifer, the red cow, who was burnt and made, and whose ashes were used to create this water, this purifying water that was sprinkled on the people who were in contact with dead bodies at various levels. They would sprinkle that water on them, which is a mixture of several things, but the ikar, the essential item that we don't have today, is this red cow that's never been worked. And then they use this cow as the activating principle in these they're called the mechatat, the waters of purity. And then a person gets purity, and the Rebbe says that purity leads to smell. As the Gemara says, Reach de chaninuta ani mariach. Amar le beni tara yesh b'chai. Two rabbis are in the house of learning, and one is the father of his son who is there. And the son says, wow, I smell figs. And there were not figs out anywhere. And his father had figs hidden inside his glima, in his cloak. And he said, my son, now I know that you have purity, because you can smell across the room and know what I have in my pocket. Then that's a sign that your sensitivity of smell is a sign of sexual purity. So you see how this center column is giving to each other, each of the elements from the Brit. When we guard that, all of a sudden the power rises up through the whole tree, which of course is represented in the human body. So this is something that is a gift from Hashem for keeping his covenant, and is something that enables a person to smell a lot more than figs. Okay, and it can happen on not just the level of physical items, but there's a spiritual scent as well. The scent between those who are righteous and those who are not. There's those who are pure and those who are not. So, okay, we're not out for getting trophies or rewards from God, but we do need to understand how our bodies and our souls work together. And how when the soul is pure, our organs work better. It's an amazing idea, isn't it? Okay, so that is the end. Baruch Adonai leolam, amen v'amen. Blessed is God forever and ever. We've finished the second Torah of Likutei Moharan. Tomorrow, God willing, we'll begin the third Torah, which is about the concept of music and where pure music comes from and where impure music comes from. So anybody is interested in music, or tell your friends, come, learn, sit together, because the Rebbe is going to teach us amazing things about how to draw down the holy music from above. All the best to all of you. See you tomorrow.